What is a small economy? What is a big economy? How we can measure it? And is the size of the economy important? Hello friends, hope you're doing well today. My name is Alina. I have a PhD in finance and I'm a business English teacher. And today we are going to talk about the size of the economy, how we can measure it, and whether it's important at all. And of course, we are going to consider some useful vocabulary related to our today's topic. So let's begin. To start with, let's think for a second. What is an economy in simple words? So, simply put, we can say that the economy is all the businesses and financial activities in a country. And the world economy is a sum of all national economies working together or interacting through trade, investment, or finance. And when we are talking about the size of an economy, we are usually referring to a specific economic indicator. And this indicator is widely used by economists, scientists, researchers, investors, governments, and other interested parties. And this indicator is gross domestic product, or in other words, GDP. So, gross domestic product or GDP is the total value of all goods and services produced in a country in 1 year. In other words, it is all the things that a country makes and sells in 1 year. It can be food, clothes, cars, buildings, services, and so on. And as you understood, the list is really huge. I believe GDP is the most popular economic indicator used to show how things are going in a particular country, and when taking the world level, what global trends to expect. So it is a very informative and complex indicator, and indeed it contains a huge amount of useful information. But of course, it has to be interpreted correctly, because GDP itself and related indicators can be really confusing sometimes. That's why we definitely will consider GDP in all details in next lesson. But in terms of our today's topic, it's enough to mention that GDP can be shown at current prices, nominal GDP, and in constant prices, real GDP. So, nominal GDP means we count goods and services using current prices, including inflation when prices go up, or what happens sometimes, deflation, when prices go down. And real GDP means we remove inflation and count goods and services using constant prices. And constant prices here mean we use prices from a fixed or basic year, just like freezing them at a certain level just to remove inflation and see real change in production. Accordingly, nominal GDP shows growth because of both inflation when prices go up and an increase in production, while real GDP shows only real growth in production after removing the effect of inflation, of course. And these two economic indicators are really important since nominal GDP shows the size of the economy in general, and real GDP shows trends in economic growth. So we will talk about economic growth and economic development in next videos. So please subscribe now so you don't miss it. And let's sum it all up at this stage. So when we want to talk about the size of the economy, we have to look at the value of nominal GDP. In other words, GDP at current prices. Now let's think about whether the size of the economy is important, and if so, why? So the size of an economy itself is really important because it shows the scale and power of a country's economy. But still, it's not the whole picture because it doesn't show how well people actually live. It also doesn't provide information about income inequality, the level of financial inclusion, or the overall standard of living. Large economy means a country produces many goods and services, has more resources for its budget, is more influential and powerful in the world, and is more attractive for investors. And yet, the size of the economy doesn't tell us how these opportunities are distributed among people. So when we talk about the size of an economy, it's more about power, influence, opportunities, potential, and so on. And it doesn't show us how average people live. However, with the rise in the size of the economy, the probability for a better living also increases. But everything else depends on government, economic culture, and institutions. And finally, let's take a look at the modern trends in the world economy in terms of its size. So, the International Monetary Fund forecasts a significant shift in the world economy by 2031. For example, the world GDP at current prices is expected to grow by more than 25%. But what's even more interesting is that emerging market and developing economies are expected to overtake the G7 major advanced economies and move into second place among the analytical groups. So they will rank just behind advanced economies in terms of GDP at current prices. And India and Brazil will be the main driver of growth among the emerging market and developing economies. And that is really interesting. And of course, let's take a look at the expected changes in the ranking of the world's 10 largest economies in terms of GDP at current prices. So as we can see, some countries will remain in their current positions, while others will move up or down in the ranking. Some countries will even disappear from the list. So the world's 2 largest economies are expected to remain the United States and China. India is expected to take 3rd place, and this rise could be very impressive. The same can be said about Brazil and Canada, which are also expected to move up in the ranking. At the same time, some countries such as Japan and Italy are expected to move down, and Russia is expected to drop out of the list of the world's 10 largest economies by GDP at current prices. Great! Now you know how to understand this kind of data, and for sure you know what the size of an economy means. Okay, and now it's time to consider some helpful concepts related to our today's topic so you could feel yourself more confident when talking about the size of an economy. So we will consider these concepts in very simple words, and let's start with this one. An economy. So in simple words, the economy is all the businesses and financial activities in a country. Next one is the world economy. So it means the total of all national economies connected through trade, investment, and finance. Next one is GDP, or gross domestic product. So it is the value, the total value of all goods and services produced in a country in one year. Next one is the size of an economy. It means how big a country's economy is, and it's usually measured by nominal GDP or GDP at current prices. And next one is nominal GDP. So that's GDP calculated using current prices, including inflation or deflation. Next one is real GDP. So it's GDP adjusted for inflation and calculated in constant prices. Next one is economic growth. It means an increase in real GDP over time. Next one is economic structure. So it's about parts of the economy, for example, agriculture, industry, services. Also, we can say it's real sector or financial sector. Next one is emerging markets and developing economies. So it's about countries that are growing but are not fully developed. Next one is, and last one is developed countries. So it's about rich advanced countries with high income and strong institutions. And that's it. And of course, let's practice a little bit. So please repeat after me. Economy, world economy, GDP, gross domestic product, size of an economy, nominal GDP, real GDP, economic growth, economic sector, emerging markets and developing economies, developed economies. Just great! You did it well! Thank you! That's it for today. Thank you! Please stay positive. Keep on practicing. It's your turn to shine.